Good evening. Tonight we have our work session agenda, July 6, 2016, Town of Ossining Planning Board meeting. This is a work session meeting, so members of the public are not permitted to speak at this meeting. It's for the planning board to have discussion and work through issues regarding certain applications. Tonight we have River Knoll and the Artist Senior Living application. We will not be approving minutes tonight. So let's begin with our first application, River Knoll, multifamily development, 40 Croton Dam Road. At our last meeting, we had our scoping session. It's my understanding that David Stillman modified our document to incorporate some of the thoughts and ideas that we heard from the public at that meeting. So we'd like to go through the document and discuss what the changes have been, and if any of our planning board members have any comments, we will provide them. Okay? Thank you. And tonight we have Chase from
Chase Cottrell.
Cockrell, right?
Cottrell.
Close enough. And we have Kathy, and we have Dan, CRCF. Chase, would you like to start the process?
Sure, I can do that. So we
You want one of the microphones?
Thank you. So we took the input from the last meeting and incorporated it into the draft of the scoping document. And for the board members, you have a copy of that document, and all the changes are in red line right now. They haven't been officially accepted to the document. And let me just start with the first change.
In red line or black line?
It's actually in black line on the copy, but in Word it's on red line. The first changes we made come on page 4. That just discusses some enhanced ideas about what needs to be included in the environmental characteristics. Those include the underground fuel tanks that are present on the site, and also the potential, in the report provided by the applicant, they said that there was a potential for some hospital waste, things like that on the site. And just, do you want me to go through all the changes or just the major ones? Okay, yeah, sure. And the next change is on page 6. It just discusses how the project will comply with the freshwater wetlands chapter of the town code. That section just needed to be beefed up a little bit. We just want to get that specific example in there. A similar change on page 7 at the very, very top just says that how the project will comply with the steep slope protection chapter of the town code. The next change is on page 8. And this has to do with the similar change, how the project will go through the SPDES process and comply with the state regulations on water pollution, pollution prevention, things like that. The next change is on page 9. And this just added some language about any current or anticipated.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
About this stormwater pollution prevention plan. There was a discussion that we had this term. We had the term, or the phrase stormwater analysis, and included in the stormwater prevention plan will be an overall analysis of stormwater on the site and what we're doing, right, to work through any runoff issues, and make the site even that much better with this new development.
Yeah.
correct?
And
So I just want to make sure that it's clarified that it would be a full blown-out plan of
Okay.
stormwater, because it's a very important aspect of the project.
Sure, we can add that back in.
I don't know how that would reward it, but that would be included in,
What we were trying to do was actually in compliance with the state permit, as a lot of things, that instead of listing all those things individually, we would just simplify and say compliance with the state permit, so.
that would be a full-fledged
Like
review.
full-blown
Okay.
stormwater pollution prevention plan would have all those elements in it.
Right, okay, I just want to ensure.
Okay, would you like to add some more specific language, or?
Well, I guess what Dan is saying is that there's a list of items included, right? A list of items that make up this stormwater pollution prevention plan, and the applicant is going to have to comply with all of those items as it relates to the
last
DES.
iteration, we're trying to actually simplify it and not list all this stuff and basically say.
So that-
comply with that permit.
Okay, so this is perfectly fine, this
Very
language.
good. And the next changes are on page 10. And this is the land use and zoning community character portion. And we added in references to the comprehensive plan and how the project will comply with the comprehensive plan of the town. Oh, yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. There is a page on change 9 that discusses basically the infrastructure that's on the site right now and any anticipated deficiencies or any problems with that.
Going back to page 1, reading my notes
Mhm.
that I was in front of the planning board meeting last night. Is it possible to add the word hazardous waste materials somewhere on that? Any hazardous waste materials? That could be, I see the word asbestos or whatever, but hazardous waste should cover us if there's anything on the problem.
Yeah, you think it's a little too restrictive now, just the hospital waste, and you want more
I
like
think
general?
we should just say hazardous
Okay.
waste. Sorry.
But the only issue is that if there is medical waste, you're saying to add it, like it's an
Yeah.
additional medical waste and hazardous waste?
Medical and or hazardous waste.
Okay, okay.
I'm not saying.
Because we don't want to preclude
Right.
medical waste, we want to make sure that.
You want a broader category that says medical or
Medical
hazard.
and,
Medical and or hazardous
Right.
waste.
Okay. Mhm. And if you wouldn't mind jumping back to page 10. I mentioned earlier that we had added references to the comprehensive plan of the town. And also, just jumping down to the potential impact section, we added a reference to providing video simulations, photographic 3D modeling of the project and having that show how it would impact the surrounding neighborhood. And if you wouldn't mind jumping to page 11. We added a reference there, it's item F, and it's the discussion of any possible relevance of spot zoning. And we added 3 new sites for the traffic studies.
People at that meeting were also bringing up roads that were going even further
Mhm.
south. Whether or not it was relevant, someone wrote Ryder Road, which is pretty far south, but a bunch of people asked for, a bunch of the audience mentioned a bunch of other roads. Yes, I see the Circle Drive correction, those other ones, I'm just looking to see what other roads people might mention.
Yeah, I think it was Croton and Dale Avenue. It's what I have in these notes, but our traffic engineers looked at it and felt like they were too far away from the site to yield any kind of relevant data. And that was kind of, it was consensus around the office that they wouldn't really give you anything. Just staying on the same page there, there was a slight modification to the hours in which the traffic studies would be conducted. Basically making it an hour earlier, an hour later. I believe there was some discussion on having an additional study on a Saturday morning.
And the time of year, we want to ensure that we're looking at a time of year that generates peak traffic. So summer, okay, but we want to understand what it's like during the school year,
Right.
in the winter, when people are in the area using the roads at full capacity.
I think, I agree with Ingrid that you should definitely have Saturday in there. And technically, why not every day? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, people did ask for Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but from the people I talked to in the office say that that time on Saturday wouldn't really lead you into any peak, like, traffic times. It would just be regular traffic that wouldn't really impact the local intersections. But we can add that back if you'd like.
I really think we should add the weekends on this. I mean, people, whether they're going shopping, going to church, going to, taking the kids somewhere or whatever it might be, I think it should be included.
Terms have to be nothing.
Yes, it could be nothing, but yes.
Better safe than sorry, right? Yeah. Okay.
I have one question about the traffic analysis.
Mhm.
I don't have a thorough understanding of what the traffic analysis looks like when we finally get it. Does it give an estimate of the time it would take for a driver who's coming, let's say, from Hawks Avenue, to get through to 9A? There's been a lot of discussion for the public about how it takes 3, 4, 5 cycles of red light. And I'm wondering if the way the traffic analysis is conducted would actually mean that number. What's an average time that a driver has to sit before they get into 9A when they're coming from Hawks Avenue? I drive that intersection myself pretty regularly, so I'm familiar with it. And I was thinking that it's kind of interesting to do sort of off the cuff analysis by cycling it a few times myself.
Right.
But I'd like to see it more rigorously done, but presented in a way that people can understand. If I drive here, it's going to take me 3 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's something that I'll have to check on. I'm not a traffic engineer. Yeah, I'll check on it for you. And then,
So if we were going to add a sentence to this requirement, it might be that the data be presented in a way that would show the cycle time from Hawks Avenue onto Route 9A, which takes into account the number of things measured. I don't know if it would be condensed into that value for the driver.
yeah, I'm not sure that they're ordinarily presented in that way, where it's like point A to point B, but I'll check and I'll make sure.
If it can be done, I think that would be very helpful.
All right, if it can be done, we can definitely add it. If you just jump to page 13, just sticking with the traffic portion of this, and we just added some more specific language on item D that talks about a speed study and along the site's frontage, and also item F that adds in school bus routes and also stops in the traffic study and in the neighborhood. And a minor change on page 14, item J, adding the category of pedestrians into that section. And I believe there's a grammar correction there, but we won't talk about that. And jumping to page 15, in item D, there is just a couple words that make the language more specific: describe, discuss, things like that. And just to the next page, on page 16. Again, this adds another category discussing the underground fuel tanks that are present on the site and medical waste that may be present on the site.
And hazardous material.
Yes, sir, we can do that. Just catch up on the notes here. Sorry. And jumping to page 17.
When I say hazardous material, just note that it's when they're demolishing those buildings, and/or taking away the soil or anything like that. Yes, people said there was buried medical waste, but those buildings could be laden with hazardous materials, asbestos, PCBs, piping, whatever, lead. All the hazardous material covers all those elements.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe that. It's a big category and it should catch all that. And to page 17, item I, there is we added the word residential to that phrase, just to make it a little broader, not just limit it to non-residential uses. Then to item K, just discussing the trucking of rock on and off site and any movement of soil that's on the site right now.
You have 2 Ks, just making it out.
Oh. And to the final page. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me talk, so to the final page. And this adds item F, which is the possible studies pertaining to site contamination. We've talked about earlier the hazardous waste, the medical waste, and any other bad things that could be there. Just to get that in there and make sure it's specific as possible. I believe that is all the changes that I have.
I probably have a few things that I think are probably, I'd like some type of possible study done. People mentioned it last time, and, the sewage on the existing pipes, and I'm just going to use some graphics. Let's say the existing pipe, it's hypothetical, let's say it was installed 50 years ago, let's say it's 6 inches from waste, and there's 50 houses using it. Now we're adding 188 more units. Does that 6-inch pipe that 50 houses use? I just want to study knowing the size of every single pipe that's running in that facility and how much waste is running through that, whether it's gallons per minute or whatever it is. I just want to study, I want to physically see the amount of water and sewage that is running through these existing pipes and what size they are, and what effect that has on the septic system of the town. I'd also like to see the exact same study done on the water pipes that are in the surrounding areas and how much water is being used, how big those pipes are, how much water is running through, and whether or not they're capable of handling another 188 additional units. I think it's real critical because someone builds, we all say, turn around and approve 188, and then we find out we can't, our waste can't go through, our water can't go through. I really want to see an analysis of the gallons per minute.
There is an infrastructure and utilities section.
There is an infrastructure and utilities section. So if there's something that's, all that's supposed to.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, a lot of people brought it up.
And I
of
think what
major
they're saying
concerns.
is that those items are going to be covered in this document. This is going to be a very thick document, and they're going to have to show that they have the capacity to build the project that they're requesting us to build. And then we are going to have our consultants, our engineer, our planner, review those documents to determine if the analysis is appropriate. So that information will be provided by the applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
And it is also referenced as technical reports at the end as sea, water, and sewer system reports. So those are reports that will need to be produced by the applicant.
Question, would the construction management plan talk about the 1,300 trucks of construction material and/or dirt or earth that's coming onto that property, what effects that has on local roads? So I don't know whether or not that's actually true, 1,300, but someone mentioned it, and whether it's material being taken off-site or on, or added to the site. Having those many trucks, in my eyes, would have an effect on local roads. And I don't know whether or not that's part of a traffic study or...
Yeah, I mean, as in page 15, under construction impacts, one of the potential impacts is 2B, which to identify truck routes and truck traffic volumes associated with construction activities at the site.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also C too, which is to describe temporary air quality impacts associated with construction and construction vehicles and truck and worker traffic related to construction activities. Also discuss the potential for adverse impacts on adjacent land uses.
Okay, thank you. Is there a section on the underwater springs? I obviously don't see it when you're there, but people mentioned it. And what effect that might have on the properties during construction. It was mentioned. And flooding. But that, I don't know if that's stormwater prevention, that's maybe A at the end, page 18. Naturally, pretty wetlands. I think there's got to be some study about that added in.
Yeah, if you look at page 7, item C there, that whole category is a discussion of the stormwater and flooding that you're talking about, but also what's going on with the water under the surface of the property there. Page 7.
7 where?
It's item C. It's the heading there. Yeah.
It says surface water. Could it say surface and underground waters? Or underground underground springs or streams or springs or?
It does talk about percolation, deep test holes, percolation. When you say that,
Well, that's really to just determine the habitability of the soil to absorb it. As far as the springs go, it's kind of a more difficult thing to deal with. And generally speaking, stormwater practices, the footing drains around buildings to some extent address all that. And will have to be conveyed in new drainage systems that are built.
is the water table level routinely discovered in this sort of analysis, or is that something that could be asked for? Because that would handle
In
that.
conjunction with doing the soil testing for the SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, the percolation testing is also the deep hole. So the deep hole testing will give you determination as to the depth of the water.
So is that done routinely on a variety of places, so you can get a course map
It
of
would
it?
be done when the stormwater practices in the local country like the state. But I'd say it's probably, you might encounter the water at the top of the hill. But it's more likely to be encountered in the lower area. It's the depth around the shallow and slow.
Is that an expensive thing? If one wanted to do a sort of August meeting to find the sources of spring water and that sort of thing, if you mapped the groundwater level across the site, that would give you that, right? The gravel would become close to the surface.
It's
But
very-
if it's not that useful, I wouldn't want to
I
impose
mean, I
it.
think the concern from any of the downstream residents is that I think they're pointing out these streams exist and looking at there's water leaching out of the ground in various locations. So I think their desire is not for that to continue, they just don't want it to get worse.
Right.
And generally speaking, when you develop a site and lay sewers and lay gravel and put in stormwater practices and put footing drains around buildings, that all has the net result of controlling that groundwater, generally discharging in a safe manner. So it generally has a tendency to reduce it, as does just by virtue of creating more impervious surfaces. Water that had been percolating into the ground is now running off and then being handled in stormwater management practices in a different effect. But I think that's really the concern we're trying to tap into. We don't want to make people's groundwater problems worse.
And so you think that's adequately covered?
I think you could, if there's critical areas, it can be simple enough to do a test hole, stick a perforated pipe in it, and figure out if the level could be checked. See if there's any seasonal variations. But I wouldn't do it throughout the site. I mean, if there is an area of concern,
Right. There were a couple of residents who mentioned that was a concern of theirs. I wonder if we have on the record where those particular properties were, maybe put a test hole near those ones.
yeah, if the address is not
You can capture that.
Do you have any additional?
Um, This is fine. The only thing and I don't know, where can I find information on what spot zoning means? Because the people brought it up, and I just don't know what it is, and I'm just curious to find out what that means.
Well, I think we're asking the applicant to address that initially.
Okay. And they brought it up a bunch of times, and it's the first time, I'm new to this board, and it's the first time I'm hearing this, what it meant, and I was like, didn't know if I had time from the last meeting to now to even find out if it's in the building code or anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a building code issue, it's a legal concept, but initially we're asking the applicant to discuss it, and then that discussion can be reviewed by the board. So I could certainly speak to that issue procedurally as the process continues.
Okay. I believe the document at this point with the minor modifications that we discussed tonight, if those are made, can appear on the July 20th meeting for a vote by the planning board at this point. If possible, can the document be submitted the Friday prior to that Wednesday meeting so we all can just have a quick review?
Yeah, I believe with the changes tonight, we should be able to.
Okay. Thank you. We will move on to the next item on our agenda. The Artist Senior Living LLC Memory Care Assisted Living Facility, 553 North State Road. We wanted to place this on the agenda to talk about some of the issues regarding this particular application. At this point, I believe Chase F.P. Clark has created a document. Would you like to go through it quickly?
So I want to preface, at the last meeting, the applicant had asked for some direction as to what additional information the board may require. And the board asked F.P. Clark to put together a list of potential outstanding concerns or issues that were raised, but it's really up to this board to review them to see if that's something that it wants the applicant to address. So I believe this list of questions may not be everything that you ultimately determine you want the applicant to address, but just to review the questions, and then we could discuss it in the work session.
Okay.
Is that an open meeting? Is that a-
No, this is a work session. This is a
July
working
20th.
session. Oh, July 20th will be an open meeting,
It will
yes,
be
where
an
the
open
public.
meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
So as you discussed before, we went back through the meeting records and tried to pick out all the questions that hadn't been answered throughout the whole process and memorialize those. But also, we wanted to pick up on some of the issues that have been talked about in the past meetings that may have already been addressed, and actually memorialize those, who addressed it, when they addressed it, things like that. So if the first issue has to do with steep slopes. What slopes are present on the property right now? Will there be any created once the fill is brought in to level a site and to build upon? And in the June 15th meeting, this issue was discussed, and the applicant had said that they had done the calculations for the steep slopes now, what are on the site, and then what would be created, what type of slopes would be created after the site, and that they would provide the town with that information.
So we're still waiting for the information on the,
Yes, ma'am. As far as I'm concerned, that's
yes, okay.
that's outstanding. And the next issue is the actual fill that'll be brought in to level the site and to build upon. And the issue is whether that fill is going to be inspected and made sure that it's free of contaminants and things like that. And in a memo from the applicant dated 5/31/16, they stated that the fill will be the fill that'll be brought in is inspected and provided with manifest documents stating that it's been inspected, it's free of contaminants, things like that.
But we'd like to see those reports before that material is even brought to the site. I've heard too many stories of things happening, whether it's at Osmond or Briarcliff, especially at Briarcliff High School, where all that fill was brought in, and now they had to go and have removal, and I just don't want to have like 100 trucks of fill. I want to see the report on every single truck, before it's even coming.
I mean, that's something you can consider as a condition to an approval resolution or any kind of, that could be a condition that prior to bill coming to the site, that reports have to be produced and reviewed by
The building,
department.
the building inspector, yeah. Because you don't, you want to ensure that someone is authorized to review it and is accountable.
And the next two items on the list are kind of sub questions about the steep slopes and the fill that's being brought in. One, will the fill cause leaching once it's put onto the site? And two, will the applicant have to do a specific analysis about any slopes created and how they're going to affect the watersheds of the river and also the adjacent wetland? And the next item is, will the negative declaration be available for public review before it's adopted? And yes, it will. And the next item has been discussed in a couple different meetings, but it's will all the conditions agreed to by the developer be actually added to the site plan, the final site plan of the development?
I mean, just to point out, there's different ways this board can create conditions to any future approval. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a plan document, it could be in a resolution, and there could be specific conditions.
Isn't it typical for it to be in a resolution of the actual project?
Right, yes, you could list all the conditions, that the approval is granted subject to whatever conditions that this board deems necessary and appropriate. But it may not be particularly on a plan, on final, there could be notes on plan that are different from conditions to the approval, and the applicant would have to comply with both.
Well, the condition should be in a document that says,
Right,
this is
approval
approved,
resolution.
yeah, that is approved by the planning board, certified by the clerk, and is a part of, just our documents.
Right.
And that should be a reference to the actual
Right,
plot.
filed in this matter.
Right.
An approval resolution conditions filed in this matter. So to answer the specific question, it may not be just on a plan, but there's other documents that are relevant.
Right.
And there may be like very specific things that do actually go on the site plan, like, we'll turn the lights off at 10 p.m. or something like that. But what I think she's making a really good point is that a lot of that stuff is going to come in the resolution, and it's going to be memorialized, but it may not necessarily appear on the site plan or the final plat.
Yeah, we want to, follow normal operating procedures. In other communities I've worked in, that's typically how it works.
Which also would be sure is, generally speaking, contractors have the plans. They specifically want the contractor.
Of course, so any items that are typically on the plan should be on the plan. Conditions of approval should be in a resolution, but if there is necessary for the plat to have conditions on it, then we will ensure that those conditions are placed on the plat. And that can be stated in the resolution as well, right? So that we're all on the same page and says this will be included in our plat. And just have those items, and whatever items you deem that are appropriate, we can put on there. I think we have to make it very clear and cut and dry of how we handle this application, because we want to ensure that each application that comes after it is handled in the same way. We don't want to, have different rules for different projects. So we can definitely do that. So
any item you deem appropriate to put on the plat, we should just make sure it gets put on the plat.
We won't, it won't be a plat, it's just a site plan and stuff.
Okay, yeah, so it can be put on there.
Yeah, just memorialize it, you know, and then certain documents and agreements obviously should be the developer's responsibility to provide as a, you know, before the thing gets signed. There's other things like that I would say should be live in both worlds, like the manifest, the film, that anybody who's bidding on this will look at these plans and know that that's a requirement.
Right, so in our resolution, can we say items to appear on the plat? And those items will appear on the plat so that we know that the applicant and the planning board has agreed that these are the items that should appear on the plat, and these are the conditions of, you can do 2 groups.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's the most appropriate, so it's very clear and everyone has an understanding of how it's gonna work. Okay.
The next item just discusses the layout of the site and whether it could be changed to limit the impact on the wetland buffer, and like what process was used to actually figure out the layout, and are there any alternatives?
I'd like to bring something up. You know, I've asked in a few of the meetings, like, could you change the shape of the building, because the building looks just like in a bunch of other cities. And then you look, go to the website, you see one that's a little bit more urban, where it's a completely different design. In the past couple of days, people have been sending emails on this project, and one person brought up a subject that actually I thought was actually a good approach, because there's so much wetlands in the back that some people feel there are, and some people feel there aren't. And all the work they're doing in the back of that space. And they were concerned about the people walking, the patients walking around the perimeter. Why not use the roof, turn it into a roof garden, where that's where the people can go, and that's their walking path. By doing that, you don't need the fence outside, because the patients can't go outside. The only area where they can go is onto the roof. And it creates a much more of a green buffer zone, and you're not touching any of the existing wetlands, which are in dispute with a bunch of different people as to where they are and where they aren't. I think, and change the shape of that building to accommodate something like that.
So what you're saying is that in the wetlands buffer area, you don't want people walking along the wetlands buffer area? Is that what you're saying? 'Cause I want to be clear.
It's the way their building is designed. It's I have to actually look here. Hold on 2 seconds. So the way their building is designed right here is this whole area in the back
Right?
where they're putting the fence. Redesign the shape of this building, because you have these paths around here where the patients are escorted outside and walk around. It's an elevated building, let the people just, instead of going in the back along these paths, let the people just go up onto a rooftop, which has a fence around the top of it, so no one falls off or climbs the fence, and use that as the place. So all this property, all the property around there, I don't have to build that meandering path, I don't have to touch any of those trees, I don't have to touch the stream besides redirecting what's going underneath the new building. It just might be a more logical thought. I would like the applicant to at least show us a study of how that can be done. Whether or not it's legal with the state dealing with patients and a fence, but they were proposing an 8-foot high fence where all over the space, I don't even know if you're allowed to have that high fence as in the residential area, I think it's gotta be a 6-foot high fence. I'm not sure about that. But I think it's just, I still like to see, this has been here for, they haven't changed the shape of the building that I've seen besides cosmetic things. I even went to the website today to check to see if there was anything new on there, and I haven't seen anything. And then I saw the email that came from you today, Sandy, saying rooftop garden landscaping, EAC. I thought that was actually a very good thought. I don't know if this came
Yeah.
today. It's just another, I mean, I know it's a work session, but it's just something that for the next meeting that we have with the applicant.
If you're willing to entertain dialogue, I can probably help you move this forward, because I do have the information I can impart to you. It's up to you. I'll leave it to you guys.
I mean, is that something that you as a board would like the applicant to address? I think the purpose of this is to give the applicant guidance on what the board as a whole, what information that the board as a whole still thinks is relevant before it
When I look-
potentially considers.
When I look at the site, and I look at what's there today, and I heard a lot of talk at the last few meetings about we're preserving the existing area. Yes, you know, every time you build a place, you're gonna cut down a tree here or there, whether or not, it's inevitable. But what they were proposing is what they call green lands versus non-green lands. It just, when you look at it in the color, it didn't seem like the percentages actually added up. It seemed like it's all building, all parking lot, and 1% green. And I'm exaggerating on the numbers. I just really trying to figure out a way to make it less impact on the environment. And I think less impact on the environment would move the building forward. Whether or not it's reduce the amount of people, I don't know about. But using that roof for the patients, I heard some interesting comments, like they're not gonna know, like, the applicant, like, whether it was the last meeting or one, they said, it's designed, the building's designed in a way that makes them comfortable. Front yard, backyard, or whatever it is, and I sat there and I laughed, how is a person with Alzheimer's gonna know what is their front yard or backyard or anything like that? But yes, you want them to go outside, smell the fresh air, walk around, use a building that's possibly a flat roof. Yes, it might have something in the front that makes it look like it's not a flat roof building. But if it's a garden up there used for the people to walk around, we're saving the environment, where all the animals that are going through there, to me, it's a win-win situation. Dealing with the water from the streams going through the property, I still have concern about that. And I still don't think they have addressed that fully, and
Say that again, the water going through the stream?
again, from this, we talked last week with all the different ponds and streams going right there, and then when it comes right up to their property, it's going through a pipe that I think they said it was 24-inch pipe, right through it on a diagonal, and I figured if you redesign that building, maybe part of it can be open, so that the fish that are in those streams are not going through another tunnel. Again, we want development and everything like that, but we also want to protect the wildlife that's there. And that's a concern of mine. I don't feel I have been satisfied with what I've heard from the applicants on that.
So you want to preclude residents and employees from walking in the back of the property for the purpose of further maintaining the wetland buffer? Is that the purpose of precluding the residents from doing that?
They have these paths going around.
Right.
And then they have to have a fence behind it so that they don't escape.
Mhm.
And I don't
So
know-
you want to
I wanna
preclude the
take
building
all
of the fence, of the fence?
on the fence and the pathways and just put it all onto the roof of the building and let them walk around. It's a big floor plate, it's a large space for them to walk around on the roof.
Well, I mean, you asked the applicant to address previously other alternatives.
Right.
You could ask the applicant if the board thinks it's worthwhile to address the feasibility of a roof, having a roof garden. But-
I mean, that's a nice idea, the roof garden. I don't know if I'm in a position to say, to preclude the residents from walking in the back of the property.
Well, it's assisted.
But
living-
obviously,
it's assisted living environment. so-
obviously, the planning board can
Yes.
make the decision. I can be outvoted, which is absolutely fine. But I would believe that it would be important if they want to do a roof garden, that would be beautiful. But walking outside, I don't think we should limit their access to the property in that way. I don't know if we want to do that, but,
There's gotta be, on the plan, I know there's a fence in the back, they showed it, I didn't see where it was on the sides. I didn't see where it stopped, and I could be wrong in the front, but I don't think it's open to North State Road, where they could just meander and walk around. It's gotta be some type of barrier that's stopping them from the north side of, let's say the top of it's north and that's the south. From there, so there's something over here and over here that's preventing them from going to the front of the building. So it's really just the loop right here, which I think this central area is the cafeteria of some sort, or meeting hall or something like that. So if they reshape the building, move this a little bit further, they're not intruding on the wetlands, which are really going, the wetlands are.
the wetland buffer, you mean?
Yes. I've seen this part of the property flood. I've seen water in that area with my own eyes, so that's, I'm just trying to.
There's
get
an
this-
understanding that
I'm trying to
today.
get this to be moved up here.
Yeah, I understand. And today, it may be flooding, right?
Right.
But as you improve the site, right, there are opportunities to ensure that it would not flood in that area. And right now, you're saying that you don't want the residents not to walk on the wetland buffer. That's what you're essentially saying?
I'm not 100% sure of that, but I think that if they use the top of the building, I don't have to worry about the shape of the building. I think the building could be moved forward a little bit further.
Because you don't want the building in the wetland
I don't
buffer.
want, yes.
Is that what you're
People
saying?
are walking there with a fence, and if a deer is gonna come along and he wants, and they're like, okay, where do I go now? The deer's gonna end up saying, okay, I'm gonna walk around the property and go on North State Road or whatever.
Today, we do have deer
Yes.
walking in the middle of the, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So that, anytime you put up a fence, to me is we're impeding in there, and we're the humans that have taken over their property.
I agree
Yes.
with you. My house did that too.
Yes.
And of course, they have no, they don't, and that's something that we do consider. I don't know precluding the residents from using that area. There could be health and wellness issues associated with it. I don't know if we want to preclude that, because now they're confined on this property. And I think the roof garden is a beautiful, that would be a beautiful contribution to the project as well. I don't know if that's where we want to go with this, because, we want to ensure that the humans also have the opportunity to enjoy the site as well.
But the people that are going in the back, I don't think and I could be wrong, they're going outside, whether it's by themselves or with a nurse aide or something like that. I don't know, it's again assisted living. it's like an old timers type of place, so are they gonna stand out there, is a nurse gonna be there with them, or whatever? Or they just freely just open up the door and walk right out? So to me, that back area right there, and again, yes, they're bringing a lot of dirt, a lot of earth. So if they can push this a little bit further, it's bringing less dirt, the neighboring properties north of it, from the top of the door, at least their property won't end up flooding a little bit more, because you're now raising the elevation, whether it's 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, or even 1 foot higher. All that water is gonna collect, and it's gonna collect on some of the people in the, sitting in the, out there. It's gonna be flooding their properties. And again, back in April, I walked the sites. I produced this little plan showing where I saw the ponds, and I still have never really truly seen this from the applicant going forward. Okay, and they keep,
We can certainly ask the applicant. I mean, the applicant has put their preferred development of allowing residents in the back of the property. You could ask the applicant to address whether it's feasible to do a roof garden and limit access to the roof, the residents' access to the roof, and not allow that. And, you know, the applicant may be able to quickly respond to that and say whether such a concept would be feasible and why.
There are-
What their preference is and the basis for their preference.
That would be
Obviously,
great.
they don't prefer to do it, you know, they haven't proposed to do a roof garden, but they can certainly address whether it's feasible to limit Alzheimer's patients to the roof. If that's something that the board thinks is worthwhile pursuing.
There are urban areas where it's in a city, and they're not gonna just open up the front door and let them walk around the neighborhood. Here, I'm just saying, instead of having it be on a wetland where you have a fence, where it's blocking wildlife walking in the back of that property, move it all forward. Put it on top of that the part of the building on top of that parking in front. You don't have to change your design of your parking, it's just a few posts, columns to support it, to move it forward. Just, again, that's what I mentioned, I mentioned it 2 meetings prior. So I would just, it's again, the applicant, the next.
There's
hearing,
there's nothing wrong with asking the question,
Yes, ask
but
the
you have to understand that, are you saying, say this gets built,
Right.
3 years down the line, the applicant or the property owner says, you know what, I'm gonna put up a fence. Are you gonna preclude them from putting up a fence along their property line? Because, you know, for whatever reason? I just want us to understand what we're asking and if this is what we want to do as we move forward. So I think there should be some thought given to that. And of course, you have the opportunity to share your ideas with the applicant.
And one other subject, someone else brought up today also, and I'm not an expert on this field, but deal with Newcastle, email that came through today that was talking about the EMT and the noise of ambulances, whatever else at the site.
I guess the request, from what I read, was should there be some type of medical services on site so that we're not putting an undue burden on our own services in the town village. And there are continuing care retirement communities that do that. So is that an option for this project?
And also, I'd just like something else added about the noise of ambulances in a residential neighborhood for, I forgot how many patients they have in there. It could end up happening once a day, 5 times a day, it could be that much more that we're adding to.
So when you're saying you want something added, something added.
I'd like a study done on what the noise impact will be from ambulances coming to and from that property, dealing with senior citizens. How often does something like that happen? I'd like a study of how many times it happens at the other facilities, so that at 3 in the morning, we're not being woken up by hearing EMT, an ambulance coming by. Yes, things like that happen, but what impact that's going to have on the residential neighborhood that abuts this property? Like that also added into the study.
Yes, you can, this can be a discussion with the applicant.
Continue, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no. Do you want to move on to the next item? Okay. And so the next item is a discussion of whether the stream running under the property could be partially daylighted, taking off the ground and letting the water see the daylight. But I think that both the applicant's engineer and the town's wetland consultant has said that if that were to be done, it would render large amounts of the property unusable, and also that it may not actually benefit the water moving through there. There would be no benefit.
I strongly disagree with those assessments.
Yeah, I disagree with those assessments. Actually, I think that daylighting the stream is feasible and would have substantial benefits to the aquatic wildlife. The analysis was done by the engineering firm, and indeed they did determine it to be non-feasible, but I don't believe that the assumptions that they used represented all of the available options. Most specifically, they used an assumption that the grade from the level height or the main height down to the stream bed would have to be some angle, below some angle. I forget what the angle was that they specified. It was a very low angle. And they calculated that because of that angle requirement and the fact that the site will be 6 feet above or maybe even 8 feet above where the stream bed would be toward the front of the property, that would make the required swale to be, I forget the exact value, but it was something like 54 feet wide. So they showed a drawing that would start in the northeast as fairly narrow, but by the time it got out toward the road, it was 54 feet wide, which would indeed block, a significant portion of the property. However, if you changed the assumption of what that angle had to be, the swale angle, and take it to the other extreme and say, well, what's wrong with the vertical wall? There are many streams that run through vertical wall constraints. If you did that, then the stream would only be 6 feet wide. And so, of course, you'd have to have a fence so that people didn't fall in. But it would only be 6 feet wide, could run down on the property line between the artist site and the adjacent car wash, and wouldn't block the road at all, or very little.
So people could fall potentially, could that
if they were-
potentially be a hazard? Because remember, the type of people who will be living
Yeah.
on the property, and that has to,
Absolutely.
for the applicant, would be paramount to ensure that they didn't have a hazardous condition on the property.
As it should be.
Right,
Uh,
okay.
But an
Just so that
adequately.
we're
yeah.
looking at all aspects. of
Oh,
it.
absolutely, yeah. Safety is paramount, but I completely believe that an adequate fence would prevent anyone, even someone who was determined to fall in. So I think that option should be considered. And opening, daylighting the stream in that way, I think would have a very significant benefit to the wildlife, and at the same time would not limit the building in any way. So I think that should be reconsidered or reanalyzed by the engineering firm of the applicant. I have,
also agree with the same.
so leave 2 other comments for later areas.
Okay.
The next item is whether the off-site wetlands and the wetland buffer have been depicted correctly on the plans. And like the last item, the town wetlands consultant has agreed that, or stated that he believes that they are appropriately depicted. They're in the right place. The buffer's in the right place.
Can I make a quick comment to that?
One minor but important point that I've made many times is that to date the name of the stream it has not been properly shown. It's been referred to generally as a water conveyance and so forth. And the applicant has agreed to show it as a Volcanico River tributary
Okay.
on the site plans.
The applicant
Right.
has agreed to do that, so that.
So there's no objection to that, and he's agreed, and so I'd like to see that
Yep. Good.
carried out.
The next item is, will the applicant be required to provide a financial guarantee against any unanticipated damage due to such things as repositioning of the watercourse, the use of pesticides, the nature of the fill or demolition activities on the existing structure? The next item has to do with the downstream defender. There's been talk that it would be beneficial to the stormwater runoff to take out sediments of that, but it could be not advantageous to aquatic life. And the next item is, should the applicant be required to submit a risk mitigation plan intended to eliminate or minimize the possible effects of the demolition of the existing residence?
Some of these items, if we're in the secret process, right? Some of these items can be put in the category of conditions to approval resolution. Some of these items could be in the category of that needs to be addressed in getting a demolition permit, right? And some of the items that I think we should focus on for today is what other additional information does this board need the applicant to address before it can consider potentially amending the negative declaration. So to the extent items are approval resolutions and can be conditions, I mean, that could be addressed that way. But to the extent, some other information is still needed for this board to make an informed secret determination, that should be the focus of what we're trying to do in this work session, so that we could give the applicant guidance and that information could be provided prior to the next meeting.
If we could step back one item, will the downstream defender be required by the planning board? I think we determined at the last meeting that it is not, or will not be, at least according to Dan and
But
Coleman.
this particular item is not in our document, our EAF. The downstream defender, are you
But
going,
that's not the sole purpose of this.
well, she just
listing.
specifically stated that we should focus on items with regard to the EAF. But yes, if we decided to take it out, it's fine, it's out.
I
Okay,
think the
Yeah.
planning board said it wasn't a necessary, there was a
Okay,
discussion that it
Right.
might
so-
be a necessary mitigation measure.
All right.
And that the consultants recommended taking it out.
But I'm asking the question just to ensure that,
Mhm.
okay?
yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, very
I mean,
good.
I can help. if I remember correctly, the discussion was unless it can be used for the runoff from the parking lots, for example, the impervious surfaces of the site, rather than from the upstream waters.
That's exactly
And
right.
that's what I've charged our engineer to look at that issue.
Okay.
And so that's.
So we're
Yeah.
still looking
And
into
in- And
that.
in fact, that's my preferred solution, so
And they're
that'd be
So
terrific.
just stormwater. Perfect.
Right.
We're all on the same page.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
And the next two items may come under the categories of things that have been talked about, but you don't necessarily need more information from the applicant. We discussed, the town wetland consultant recommended a five-year wetland buffer maintenance and monitoring plan.
Yes,
Yeah.
we would like that.
And also not to use pesticides in the buffer, the wetland buffer. And that's the type of thing that you could add to the site plan or the
Okay,
resolution.
I think that's fair.
The next item is the use of porous pavers as a part of the SWIP.
Okay,
Mhm.
yes.
And there was a question about whether there would be any monitoring of the stormwater management. I guess I interpreted this to be like after it was built.
I think that would be a good idea.
Mhm.
I think it should be monitored so we can see what's happening.
And the next item may be in here on error, my error.
Uh-huh.
Sorry about that. But I believe the applicant has already submitted a tree inventory of what the trees are there on the site, and then
I don't think that's happening.
it hasn't happened.
I've asked them to do that.
You bet. Okay.
That's being prepared.
And the next item goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It was could if the layout were to be changed, how would this affect the applicant economically? Would it actually be a viable project if you change the layout or reduce the size and things like that? And the final one, and just barely touched on this earlier, but will the planning board require that the outdoor lighting be turned off at any point in the evening?
I'm sure there's opportunities to look at lighting to ensure that the adjacent neighbors are not inconvenienced by lights, right? The wattage, et cetera, because now it's a vacant site and we want to be empathetic to those issues. So I believe it is fair to ask that the applicant look at that issue and mitigate it to every extent possible because it is a residential neighborhood.
And maybe if there are lights in the back of the property, maybe they put on motion sensors of some sort, or occupancy sensors, or vacancy sensors. So that if someone's walking there, they'll turn off, but if they're not,
Yeah, that's good.
yes. That-
And that's a security
That's a
measure too
security
for
measure, yes.
the,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so we've gone through, yes, go ahead. Yeah.
If I could, I'd like to step back to the very first.
Yeah.
With the proposed grading, create any regulated steep slopes and so forth. This issue of raising the property by, I think it's 6 feet, has brought a lot of angst to some of the neighbors. And while I understand that an applicant would want to raise the property some to get it out of a known flood zone, which makes sense to me, I'm wondering if it needs to be that extreme. 6 feet will make the building much more imposing than it would otherwise be. And I'm wondering if there's a way that using the hydrologic modeling, you could determine how far you would have to go. It's not for that purpose?
No, it's not for that purpose. I mean, and Mr. Ciarcia can certainly address this better than I can. I'm certainly no PE. But it's not for the purpose of raising the building out of a flood zone. It's essentially you're dealing with a site that has different, obviously, has topography and has different grades. And so what you're trying to do is create, and this is very simplistic, you're trying to create a building pad. And to create a building pad on a site, again, this is very simplistic, sometimes you have to cut, and sometimes you have to fill. And in this particular site, in order to create the pad for that building, there is an area, and it's not the whole site. Nobody should think it's the whole site. There is a small area where there will be fill up to, I think it's about 6 feet, in order to create the building pad. But that's not filling the whole site 6 feet, not by any means. No, not by any means. It's not even
The
close.
site is like 350, something like that. The first floor is 353.
How about in the presentation, they can indicate exactly where
Yeah, what
that
I'll
will
do
be
is,
happening?
I'll take this back to the.
So that we're all clear on exactly, because,
Yeah, so if that's the purpose, that makes me wonder even more strongly whether wherever that building pad is put, is spec'd, whether it couldn't be lower. If the current residential house that's on the property, I understand that's at the highest point, you were gonna build out from there, maybe you could cut. If you could cut 3 feet off of that 6 feet elevation, that might make a big
Let me
difference.
say this too, I know it's not a public hearing, and I appreciate the fact you're indulging me, but I do think this is helpful. I will tell you that while I don't expect Mr. Hofoot to come back here on the 20th with a plan that's substantially different design than what you see here, as a result of the public hearings and the comments, we've heard the comments, I've charged the client and the consultants with taking a look at the design of the building. And they are in fact taking a pretty deep dive into the design of the building. I expect, not positive, but expect to be able to come back with some design changes. Now, they're not going to be wholesale changes. I don't want to mislead anybody. But what I said to the client is, to the extent that you can achieve your program, right, because they have a program that they need to achieve, and reduce impacts by pulling the wings in a little bit this way and this way, by making the core a little bit narrower and smaller to increase green space that way. That's the kind of analysis that we've been undergoing now since we left here last time. I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to have something. I don't think it's going to reach the level, though, of saying, well, let's cut the site to create, a different pad, substantially different pad than the one that you have in front of you. I'll ask the engineer.
That sounds
But-
like an
but I just
easier
wanna
one
let
to
you
me
know-
than others.
But I do want to let you know, and I was going to say this to
Yeah.
Ms. Sharon after the meeting, we take seriously the comments. Look, I'm an advocate, got to do what I've got to do. But we take the comments very seriously. I've been doing this kind of work now for 35 years, okay? And so I've done a lot of give and take over 35 years. We're trying very hard to address comments and also achieve what we need to achieve here. I'm optimistic that we're going to come back with something that's going to be helpful. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but I'm optimistic.
Can I ask a question? Because it's, whether it's 3 feet of fill or 6 feet, but I understand he has to create a level pad. So can't you just put pylons under the property and have the pad? I know it might be more costly, but I've seen houses or properties or buildings where the building is elevated up so that that stream is running underneath it,
Yeah.
unimpeded, where it's getting light, it's not necessarily getting light, but it's getting fresh air.
We raised that, and as a result of that, we went back and we looked at it, we discussed it, and we brought the architect who hasn't been here into the mix, and we said to the architect, can you do this? And the answer that came back is no, it's not practicable. It's not impossible. I said that last time. Nothing is really impossible, but it just isn't practicable for this project on this site to be building that kind of structure. You also have a height limitation in your zone, which is not particularly high. I forget what it is, 2 stories, 35 feet. So we run up against that as well. But we're taking the concern seriously. We're looking at it. I just don't think we're going to be able to achieve it.
And you want the building to be higher?
No, actually, instead of putting the 3 feet of fill or the 6 feet of fill, obviously this is the high point of the building right there. So you take a little bit of that down, and then the rest of the building to make that level pad in the front and the south side and the other sides. Put it on little posts that instead of filling it with 3 feet of dirt, put columns every
Can I-
12 feet.
Can I ask you, because I'm trying to understand, seriously.
I'm just trying to get the river.
What is that
water-
trying to do?
I'm trying to get the water that's running from the Botanical River, from all the streams.
Not running from the river, it's running to the canal.
Right.
I think we could do that more easily with having a vertical channel on the right
On
side.
the right side.
I think this, what you're
And
suggesting
and we've
would
looked
be
at,
pretty
and I want to
hard.
say that, we looked at that as well, and I'll ask them to look at it again, but I'm told that it just can't work, and again, you're gonna have to rely on the town
It
engineer.
doesn't work with these, with the grades that they were considering for the swale. But if they're talking about vertical,
Slightly different issue, I think.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the question is, there's a difference between what a daylighted channel would be where it meets North State Road and whether it can be moved to the northerly boundary. And what I'm saying is, we did look at whether we could in fact move it to the northerly boundary, because we'd be happy to do that if we could do it. And the answer that I got back from the engineers is that there is no engineering way on this site to do that.
Right, I looked at that engineering analysis very carefully from Brian. It was a thorough analysis for that one scenario with the angle as specified. So, and that was a starting point. So if we need to accommodate 6 feet of elevation on the north side of the property, or the east, whatever that is, to get from the stream bed to the pad level, and the swale angle couldn't be above whatever it was.
I understand.
Right,
I
okay.
understand.
So with that set of assumptions, he did the analysis
Yeah,
beautifully.
And
And indeed, it wouldn't work. But if you made it vertical walls,
Maybe.
it's 6 feet wide.
maybe, and I'll ask the question, although I have to
Yeah.
believe that as an engineering matter, he's not just saying take this scenario as the only scenario. He's looking at what the inverts are, what the grades are, where the water is coming from and where it's going, and deciding how he can, as an engineering matter, make that work.
Okay,
Right.
so
There's-
let's allow the engineers to take a look at.
Okay,
at that.
yeah, if you could ask him
Yeah,
to
and
look
then-
at that.
Look at it again.
At that very specific extreme. So he looked at one extreme, I'm asking for the vertical extreme, and see if it can work.
Oh,
If I can make one other comment. So I'm very pleased to hear about the building design changes you're considering, pushing here and there, doing what you can. Speaking personally, if you can make some of those changes, even moderately as you can, and lower the pad level, and daylight the stream in one way or another, then I would be a happy person, and I would feel very comfortable with the project.
Thank you.
Noted.
Okay, you're finished? Do you have any other comment? Okay, thank you for providing this document. I think this was a good session, and we got through a lot of the information regarding this particular application. We look forward to seeing the applicant July 20th with some modifications to the
We're hoping to
plan.
get materials back to you by Monday, by the 11th, which I think
Okay.
is next week.
So we're looking forward to seeing the information
Can that be
on Monday.
sent in electronic format, the drawings,
What, the drawings?
or the
Once
PDFs,
we, once
whatever it
it's, you mean
is?
that what would actually get submitted? Sure.
Mhm.
I'm just, so it's easy to put onto the website.
Yeah,
Yes, you can give-
sure.
I think that is a requirement,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
That's a requirement for our applicants in any event. So at this point, we will not handle the minutes at this meeting. We'll place it on the July 20th agenda. And our next meeting is July 20th, 2016. Ray Sanchez, Superintendent of Ossining Schools, will be joining us. Hopefully, he's the first item on the agenda, and then we'll just move to our public hearings. And then, if need be, August 3rd, it would be a work session if we believe we need one. And the next regular meeting is August 17th. With that, I thank all of you for attending. And I would like a motion to adjourn this meeting. I don't even know if I usually ask for motions, but I'd like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.